Hey everyone, welcome back to the Kirkpatrick podcast. It is Jim and Vanessa, your favorite hosts, but we've got an amazing guest with us today. We've got Dr. Keith Keating, the author of the Trusted Learning Advisor, and we are so excited to chat more with him about business partnerships and L&D and the future of L&D. I've got lots of questions and I know he's going to have lots of amazing answers and insights. But first, you know your girl, you got to get in a quick Kirkpatrick update. It is the end of 2024, sadly. So for those of you that did not get Kirkpatrick certified this year, no worries. We're going to put it on your vision board. We're going to have a vision board party, and we are going to put it on your 2025 vision board because, as I think you're going to find from today's episode, it is so crucial for you to do the evaluation, get the data that you need to show your value and what it is that you can bring performance-wise to the organization. It's all truly aligned. So let's make 2025 that amazing year. And with that, in case you have not seen, we have unveiled a new certification journey. So no longer just bronze and silver. We've got more programs for you aligned with roles in organizations such as instructional design program. We've got a builder program for those of you that are building the survey tools and mechanisms. One on being a manager in learning and performance, even a chief performance officer certification program. So there's a lot of good things happening at Kirkpatrick Partners. And if you did not hear, for those of you that are currently certified, we are starting recertification as part of our credentialing program to ensure that we're doing our part, monitoring and adjusting to help be that person in that organization to walk alongside y'all as you are doing this work for us, learning more about what you all might need and what support you might need and how we need to evolve in evaluation. So that was a lot of me. And you don't really want to hear from me. What you want to hear more about is our guest. Dr. Keith Keating serves as a Chief Learning Officer for BDO, an academic advisor for the University of Pennsylvania's CLO doctoral program. He is the author of the award-winning L&D Practitioner's Guide, The Trusted Learning Advisor, a respected industry author and sought-after keynote speaker. Dr. Keating ardently champions lifelong learning as the pathway to seizing control of one's career trajectory. He is also an advocate for talent development and leverages his platform to emphasize human talent as the cornerstone of organizational success. He is a resident of Toronto. Hello to our neighbors up in Canada. We see you. We're excited to have one of yours. I actually have a few Canadians in the next bronze program. So there's something happening up there in Canada. Dr. Keating, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I am great. It is an honor to be here. The Kirkpatrick name, the brand, iconic. So it's a little bit of a fanboy moment to be here with you and Jim.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we heard a little bit about your journey in your bio, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more with our guests about your background in learning and how you got to this place where you talk less about the formal learning, but more about the performance and the partnership. And how did that evolve for you?
I think many people start with this next statement, and that is, well, it was not a traditional journey. So in a cliche moment, I'll say it was not a traditional journey. For me, it started with my education and my upbringing. So my father was in the army, and I'm a army brat, which means I was raised in Germany, Korea, Japan. Didn't come to the US until I was around 12 or 13. When I did, my education system was quite different than where I landed in Florida. And in some ways, I was ahead, and in other ways, I was significantly behind. And my parents would go into a teacher conference, and one teacher would say, "Oh, Keith is really smart and should probably skip a grade." And then they would go next door and they would say, "Keith has a learning disability
Oh
and
God.
should probably be held back or put into remedial programs."
Wow.
Wow.
It was a significant struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it became so much for me that I ended up dropping out of high school when I was 15.
Wow.
I had just started 10th grade. And of course, when I did that, my father and teachers all said, "You will amount to nothing. You will be destined for a life working in fast food." As if, by the way, there's something wrong with working in fast food,
Mm-mm.
because there isn't. But I did exactly what they said. I got a job at Wendy's, and that became my life. And so for the next 2 years, I did what you'd probably expect a high school dropout to do. But I knew that I wanted to be something more,
Mm-hmm.
but I had no idea what it was. And no one had ever taught me or told me what my skills were or what I was good at doing. I never had any of those tests. And so I just didn't know. And there was an ad in the newspaper for a Microsoft Office trainer. And I remember, because
Yes.
I'm that old, where you had to look in the newspaper, Sundays, of course, for jobs. And I remember seeing that ad thinking, oh, well, how hard is it to be a trainer? I mean, I've seen my teachers, they weren't great. I know how to use Microsoft Office. So, yeah, this is no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, I go to the interview, I do a test teach, and I am horrible, absolutely atrocious. I'm coughing the entire time out of nerves, trying to buy myself time to figure out how do you teach somebody how to use Microsoft Word. And the interviewee or interviewer interrupts me and says, "It sounds like you're really sick. Thank you for coming. We'll be in touch." They called me a week later, offered me the job. And so my job was I was 17 years old and I was traveling around the country teaching Social Security Administration offices how to use Microsoft Office 2000.
Wow.
And so my students were my parents' age,
Mm-hmm.
between 40 to 60. I was their child's age, had no idea what I was doing. And it was just a hot mess until about 6 months in. And the first time I saw somebody's light go off in their eyes, and I remember distinctly feeling like I have value, that there's something that I'm actually able to contribute where I can help people. And that really started me on this journey. Quick sidebars. At my 1 year anniversary, I asked, "Why did you hire me? I had to have been awful." And she said, You were terrible, but you had two things. You had car insurance and you had no criminal record."
Oh gosh.
And so how did my career begin in L&D? I had no criminal record and I had active car insurance. That's
Okay.
what set me on this path.
Oh, well, we have kind of similar first jobs in learning. Actually, I got my start as a software trainer for a CRM company in New Jersey. But when I did my teach back, I did it not at all about software, but about essentially it was a program that I developed in college for our Greek community of like how do you present yourself when you are in recruitment, and like what are things to talk about, what are things not to talk about. Totally off base. Thankfully, they still saw something in me and hired me, and that started me here. But they did change the requirement after that. And anyone that we interviewed after that was like, it needs to be something software related. So, it's all about those people that take that first little, that first step and see something in you, or the fact that you
Hmm.
don't have a criminal record or car insurance and you have car insurance. So amazing. And thank you to your father for his service, something that I know that you and Dr. Kirkpatrick have in common, which is really, really beautiful to see. So,
Absolutely.
you just shared with us, this amazing story about seeing that light bulb go off. And I think that we can all empathize with that, right? And we all kind of have that similar. It's like the one thing that everyone in this industry says is, what they love so much about it. And it's always the light bulb, right? I loved seeing the light bulb. You actually see it. I think people think that are not in this industry, it's crazy. Like you don't really see a light bulb, but like, no, but you do. There really is one. It's over their head.
Hmm.
Um,
And in
but
their eyes, you can see
yes.
it kind of when it's like, oh, and the eyes
Mm-hmm.
go wider. And if they don't have too much Botox, the eyebrows go up.
Or you used
Now
you
I
used dye
gotta mention
sport.
something. You got something that is it's unimportant, but you both did it, and I say 90% of the time I hear people do it, and I always wonder. You don't know you said it, but you both said we saw the light bulb go off.
Mm-hmm.
I think the light bulb goes on,
Goes
doesn't it?
on.
Oh,
Go ahead and
Jim.
re-listen, listen to the tape. You both said that, and almost everybody said the light bulb goes off. I'm thinking, no, no. This is
Goes
the first time
on.
I've ever commented on it.
But
But
you're
I guess our whole
right.
industry does that. It's just kind of that's what we've always done. The light bulb goes off. Thinking you two don't have light bulbs that go off. Yours go on.
No, mine literally just went on earlier. It was off. They just turned it on.
That's so funny. I've
Okay,
never
anyway,
thought
that was
about
just a
that.
I
parting
love
thing
that.
that I just find humorous sometimes.
No, you've got great
No,
humor.
thank you for calling that out. Absolutely.
Now we're
Listen
never
for
going to
it.
say the
You'll hear
same.
other people say
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Funny.
I've never heard you. Yeah, the light bulb went on. It's always the saying is, yeah, their light bulb goes off.
Yeah. Good one.
But you're far from that. You guys got light bulbs that are flashing all over the place, both of you.
Amazing.
Here, I'm gonna make mine flash real quick. There we
Ooh,
go.
there we go.
See,
I
Off
love
and
it.
on, on. Light bulb goes on.
So so your story had this one moment, right? But were there other moments in your career that you found to be pivotal that really solidified your passion for this field and lifelong learning?
Yes, I would say it is my own journey along the way.
Mm,
When I realized for me the incredible impact that learning had on my own life. And so because I struggled so much so early on, I hated education. I hated
wow.
learning. Ironically, I was in that field, but it was just a job.
Hmm.
It wasn't a career. But then it became a career and it became then a passion. And now it's a calling. And I think for a long time, I didn't think that I had the capacity myself to succeed academically or professionally.
Hmm.
And when I discovered how to learn, how to really learn, it unlocked something in me that I never thought was possible. And it was a deeply personal transformation, shifting from this idea of self-doubt to confidence. And it ultimately showed me the power of unlocking my own human potential. And that for me is why I do what I do and why I've dedicated my adult life to this is I will never live in fear for my job. I'm never worried that I'm not going to have a job. I'm going to lose my job. I've lost tons of jobs. I've been fired, I've quit, I've been laid off,
Tons of
all the things, lots of times. But I don't live in fear now of that because I know that I can learn. I can learn whatever I need to learn to be able to accomplish whatever needs to be able to accomplish. And tapping into that limitless reservoir of growth through learning I realized I want to help other people do the same. And so that's when my shift focused to creating opportunities to help others explore their potential and ultimately empower them. My personal credo is I want to empower, encourage, and enable talent to take control over their future through the power of learning. Because that's what learning allows us to do is to truly take control over our future.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. I have to know though, how did the Social Security job go? How long were you there?
I was there about 2 years.
Wow.
It went well. I mean, I wasn't good at all, but you didn't need to be good. You just needed to have
You
car
needed to be there.
insurance and a pulse and no criminal record.
Amazing, amazing. Well, we do love
It
our
wasn't
folks
good.
at the Social Security Administration. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you for putting up with Dr. Keith during that time. So,
I feel like I'm doing a bit of penance, and not just for me. And I think this happens to a lot of us, is that when we enter this industry, we don't understand the true power of it.
Mhm.
We don't understand the power of what we can potentially provide, but also the damage that we can do. And I think I did a lot of damage the
Mhm.
first 5 or 7 years for our industry. Now, I didn't damage or hurt people, but I didn't do anything that left people feeling, wow, L&D has an important role and it has value.
Wow.
And that was a great training program. And so I feel like I'm trying to make up for that. But I think as an industry, we have a lot of work to do in terms of respecting this industry and what we do.
Wow,
I got
that's
to
powerful.
jump in here. And
Yeah, please.
I can, what you're saying is just really hitting my heart because you're saying you want to make a difference, and I think I have a feeling that when you were 17 and 19, Social Security and stuff, and had no idea how you maybe last that long. I have a feeling that it was something about you
Mm.
that that did some good that you weren't even aware of. I think you're probably aware now that, you know, you want people to know that L&D plays an important role, but I don't think it's the argument that you make so much as it's the way you present it and the way
Mm.
you connect to people. And I think that rather than, doctor this and doctor that, I think you see yourself as a regular person that is going to be honest with people and is going to in is your spirit is going to help them realize that they have that same thing within them that you have within you, that you can do things that's going to make a difference. You're loaning them some courage and that they don't have, some hope that they don't have, because I can feel that kind of stuff, and the lights are there. So I just want you to know that you're making a difference, not just by what you're saying and what you're writing, but how you connect to people and let them know they're important and you notice. And that's just a really, really neat thing to see.
I really appreciate that, especially coming from you, Jim. And it's interesting that you kind of said doctor this, doctor that. And for me, the doctorate was more of a signal for other people to help give a platform to where they'll listen. But
Good.
yeah, I think you're spot on in the sense
Yeah.
that, first of all, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm learning like everybody else. But we have these signals that we get sent out to say we're an expert, we have these credentials.
Yeah.
But I
They open
love
the
the way
door.
that
I
you,
get it.
they do. They
Sure it
they
does.
absolutely open the
Same for
door. But
me. I get it.
I think what allows me to be valuable and to be a servant to others is
Yeah.
my personal struggle with education. And for years I actually lied about being a high school dropout, and I had lied so long that I didn't even remember that was actually my story
Wow.
until about 5 or 6 years ago when I started to reflect and how I ended up where I am. And now I own it. I love it. I'm more proud of being a high school dropout than I am of my doctorate, because society and the system says that you're going to fail, says that you have to have these certain things in order for you to be successful. And I didn't have them, and I still ended up being successful. And that to me is the story that I want other people to hear, is that it's not a traditional path for all of us. It's like our fingerprints. Our fingerprints are uniquely our own, and you can be successful. Lifelong learning isn't just a concept, it's a mission for all of us to be able to unlock our own greatness and our own human potential.
And
But
your
thank you.
story, the way that you present your story, because we all have stories. They all have stories too that sometimes they're ashamed of, sometimes a checkered past, sometimes they're not sure that they have done enough or whatever. But I think you're basically saying you have. Your story is something that can motivate people and create hope in people as well. It isn't anything you have to hide. You don't necessarily say that, but I think in how you live your life and how you present your interaction with people, I think you're giving them permission for their story to be okay.
Didn't realize this was going to be a good therapy session. I can cancel my therapist for tomorrow. Thank
Oh
you.
my God, mine's this
I do have a
afternoon. What the
PhD in
heck?
psychology, but I try and just keep that under the carpet.
But Jim, you
But
have
this is
a
just me. This is nothing I
no.
learned. It's just working with Vanessa and the team there, and it is really, it comes down to that the caring and honoring people opens their minds and their hearts to learn and
Yeah.
to take those steps that they might not take without that.
But you have a very similar story too, I think, because you didn't start in
Uh,
learning, right? You know, and
yeah.
it took you what was it? The recommendation, we'll say, to go to what turned out to be your dad's, workshop on evaluation that really got your light bulb went on. In that
Oh,
in
you got
that
it.
space, you see what I did there?
That's right.
Um,
That's right. That's right, Vanessa. That's
and
true.
that says a lot too, right? You don't have to necessarily come from a place of all of the education and things like that, because frankly, you and I talk about this all the time. The books in universities are wrong, right? the universities are still teaching the model as your dad had developed it, but it has evolved up until it evolved. We updated it last year a little bit, right? With the level 4 going up to the mission statement and some things at level 3.
Right.
Which signals that we've got to keep learning. We have that due diligence. And part of my struggle with the industry, we're going to get to your book next, is we're resting on the education that we were already given and not challenging ourselves to just try and just take a step, right? We're waiting for our stakeholders to say, you know what? Take that one all the way up the flagpole to level 4, right? Or up the mountain, right? We're going to do it this time. They're not going to give you that invitation, right? But you have to take that first step. And part of that first step is ensuring you're staying up to date with the latest technology and research and all of these things, because without that, we're standing in a moment in time. And as things change, it's so cliche, right? AI is changing so many things. We have to do that. And we have to stop being kind of like the traditional education system that is so stuck in the ways. And Dr. Keith, you're a great testament for someone who was able to come out of, the education system being told like, this isn't for you. But there are people out there, my cousin is a teacher in the Newark school district, which that has a separate issue, but there are children there that do have potential, but are told constantly they don't have potential. And it becomes so challenging, and they don't ever are able to realize that potential. He tells me about it all the time, and we've got to do our due diligence to be able to open up doors and revamp how we're doing learning as adults, because we can control that more than maybe the K through 12 and higher education system. But if we're not doing that, where is our industry truly going to be? And I guess that's my next question for both of you. What do you see moving into 2025 as where our industry is going?
Jim, I'll let you jump in first.
Well, we're at a pivotal spot here. A lot of people don't value traditional learning. A lot of senior leaders are saying we want something more, or AI is going to take over. But I think, and I know we use one of your quotes in our bronze training, where you're kind of putting a challenge out there and saying we need to get out of the past and into the future. And that future, part of the future is the performance. We have to be involved in making sure that the learning has that mid connection to the results. And I think that is where the future is, because we don't want to just be seen as cost center. A lot of times it's seen training as a cost center and necessary evil, but when it leads to something and we're part of it, part of that turning it from learning into performance, they'll see that I think they'll more clearly see that we are, adding value. But I think the majority of our industry is not going to do that. And technology is going to replace all that, as it already can and does. And so that's where those are just some of my thoughts. Keith, what about you?
I think so. Yes, and I'll build on that to the point where technology can do a lot of that. It means that we have to change, I believe, who we are, who we think that we are. And largely, the industry tries to fit into this little box of training or learning.
Yeah.
I see us as problem solvers in the future,
Uh-huh.
also today. But if I were to describe myself to somebody, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a learning and development practitioner. I would say I'm a problem solver. I solve problems through learning. And the difference in
Nice.
flipping that means that I'm not relegated to just thinking about learning problems, because there could be other problems that we can solve as well.
Good.
I see us as connectors, as conduits in our organizations. If you look at the organization as a whole, and this next statement, of course, it depends on how you're structured, but largely what I see is we have access to more parts of the organization and the business than most other service lines.
Mm-hmm.
IT might do, but they're just dealing typically with the back end. HR, they have access, but not the same way that we do because they're behind the HR front of how they can or cannot operate with individuals. We're in this beautiful space that we can go out and we can connect with people across the entire organization. That means that we can start to look and scan the horizon for problems that are existing over here in this service line, recognizing, you know what, there are situations over here. I can connect them.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I can solve their problem, doesn't mean it's a learning and development situation. But for me, the biggest win in my organizations is when people just come to me
Mm.
and they say, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me with it? And it gives us this power in the sense where we can say, yes, we can help you with it. Just so you know, this is not a learning solution. This is an operation solution. This is a technology solution. There's something else here, but I'm going to help you get to the right place to be able to solve this. Because the three most dangerous words in any organization, not my job.
Yes.
And you hear that so much. And I try to coach my team. We never say it's not our job. We are going to follow through with that client service for whomever to make sure they get their solution, even if it's not us. And it's often not us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's long story short, I think for the future for us, it's evolving past just L&D and training to being problem solvers.
And I think the three of us have something in common. And I'm hopefully not patting myself on the back, but I think what we do naturally is when we help bring them together and it's time to go before the jury, whatever
Mm-hmm.
the decisions make are and present their, what has happened, we melt back into the shadows
Yeah.
and let them take the vows.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Our job is to elevate our stakeholders and make them the hero of
Yeah,
their own story. We win by proxy. When they win, we win.
there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I think to your point, we try and take all the credit. And
Yeah.
this is a learning thing. It's a learning thing. But keep our name out of it. When they
Right.
win and people dig in to try and figure out what happened, who were the ones that supported them? We were.
And the word
Yeah.
So yeah.
spreads. The word spreads. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I think you and I are aligned in how we see learning. One of the things I always say is the learning and development or whatever you call it in your organization, we're the heart and the hub for the entire organization, right? I never thought of it from like seeing it from the back end and the front end side, but we really are able to do that. So I love that's I love to hear that we are all collaborative in that and aligned in that sense. Now I want to turn, because I love this term, trusted learning advisor. I love that you use the word trusted in there. I think that's crucial. I want to dig into that. But first I have to ask, was this always a dream of yours to write a book? Like, how did the book come about?
I would say it was my father's dream for me. I can remember being 7 or 8 years old and writing little stories, and he would always say, you have to be a writer, you have to be a writer. The truth is, I hate writing. It was painful. I'm working on my second book now. It's not as painful as the first one, but I agonize over every single word on the page. I get anxiety when I see a blank page. So I have all these little tricks that I try and work through. But so I can't say it was a dream necessarily
Mm-hmm.
of mine, but sometimes you don't know what to dream because you don't even think that it's possible. And I think it's probably more along that lines that I just never thought it would be even possible, so I never bothered to dream it.
Mm. So I'm going to definitely need your tips and tricks for sure. But before that, I think I would love to know why the trusted learning advisor? How did this come to be? What was that moment that you were like, this is what the book is about?
I mentioned I grew up as a military brat, an army brat, and so those other army brats or military brats will probably recognize this next statement, but I grew up as an order taker. When you're in a military family,
Fair.
you tend to be an order taker. And so when I joined the industry and I was taking orders,
Mm-hmm.
it felt very natural to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about 8 or 9 years in that then I started to have a point of view based on all my experience. And I would start to recognize, well, that didn't work before. That's actually not a learning solution. And then I would try and have a consultative discussion with my stakeholders, not truly understanding how that works, and would find they would just push back and say, hey, get this done. I want that 30-minute web-based training. I want that 2-day ILT. And so that started not feeling good. It feels like for me, there's a weight on my chest. It's like I have this value and I have this contribution that I want to make, but I don't have this voice because no one's listening.
Mm.
And the real impact was when I joined General Motors as the head of global learning. Our stakeholders told us when I joined, we don't trust you. You are order takers and you're not innovative. And they
Wow.
weren't wrong. They were not wrong. We were all of those things. And so it became a conscious effort that, okay, I have 4 or 5 years. How do we as a team turn this around? And that was really the sandbox of trying out a lot of these best practices and figuring out what worked. And then when I left there, I had about a year to reflect on that journey and the journey with other stakeholders and customers that I worked with previously. And so the book became a culmination of everything that we had done to double our NPS score to where we were in the 65 range by the time we finished, to where they said, okay, you are a strategic business partner. We trust you. You know our business. You're innovative, and you've made an impact with us.
Wow.
Real good.
Yeah. And you said that took 4 to 5 years.
It did.
Yeah. So
It did. It is not an
it's
overnight
not overnight.
transformation for any of us. I think that's one of the most important messages is evolving from being order takers, which is where our industry largely is. And it's no fault for our own. That's how it started.
Yeah.
It started back when the manager would decide who on the service line needs to be trained to do what. And they would say, okay, go train them to move this widget here. And we did that. But then learning evolved and we tried to evolve, but our stakeholders don't necessarily let us evolve. Although I would say we can't always blame them because I think we own some of that challenge of acting and behaving like order takers as well.
Mhm.
So long story short, the book is driven out of the need for us as an industry to evolve from being order takers to being strategic business partners embedded in the business, also known as trusted learning advisors.
Well said.
So one of the important things I'm hearing, that important message, it's not an overnight thing, but I think it's also important. You were told what the brand was for your department when you started, which is a gift, right? Now you know what you're up against. Some of our organizations are not doing those things and not understanding how are we viewed by others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as much as we want to do needs assessments and I think that's all very important and more global surveys and data collection about our learning, we also have to have that moment of what data are we gathering on ourselves and how we're perceived, take our ego and listen, harmony is one of my top 5 strengths. So like not hearing, like having harmony around me is hard. So it's hard to hear that, but it's important feedback because then you know what to change, right? If you don't have that feedback, you're not sure. And I love that you also said there, not that it wasn't overnight, but you tried things. You were in a sandbox. Now while the book lays out a nice roadmap for you, right? And you can take some of those learnings so that you can do things. Every organization has little bits that's different. So you may have to try something different in order to become that trusted learning advisor in your organization. But as long as you know that some things are going to work and some things aren't, but you just got to get back up and try again. And that's the most
There's a
important
couple
piece.
things you said that I want to just highlight. I was taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
You used the word perceived. I think that is such an important distinction. First of all, we don't ever get to call ourselves trusted learning advisors. It's not up to us. Just like you wouldn't call yourself a leader. Whether or not I am a leader is determined, do I have anybody behind me that is willing to follow me and let me lead them? Because if I don't, then I'm not actually a leader. And it's the same with being a trusted learner advisor. It is up to our stakeholders and our learners to deem us, to anoint us with that title. For us, this is a North Star. This is an aspirational journey, but it's not a destination. You're never going to get there and say, okay, whew, I got a great NPS score. I got great level 4, level 3s. We're good. No, you're never done.
Mm-hmm.
This is our career. This is our industry. Our journey is to always be striving to be trusted learning advisors. But I will tell you that it is a pendulum and it is going to swing hard back and forth. Every time you meet a new stakeholder, you are starting back at ground zero. And they're probably the default state is going to treat you like an order taker. So you've got to start over with building the relationships, building the trust, establishing your credibility. And then you may be with that same stakeholder and you may be doing really good for a year or so, and then all of a sudden they're throwing another order at you. It also doesn't matter your job title. I thought every time I got a new job title or got a new advancement, this was going to be the time. It was like moving from manager to senior manager. Okay, yes, now they're going to listen to me. No, okay, they're not. All right, I got to get to a director. Get to a director. Now's my time. No. Okay, senior director. No. Chief learning officer. That was what I aspired to be. And I thought, okay, when I get there, then everybody has to listen to me. I don't have to take orders anymore. No, I do. I still get orders and they still don't listen. And so I'm still having to go back and forth. So I just share that to say for those who are title aspirationally driven, it's not going to fix anything. It doesn't matter what your job title is. It matters how you behave. It matters the credibility that you've established. It matters how you're being empathetic, how you're aligned to the business, how you understand their business. And that can be done at any job title. So don't wait for that next job title, but recognize that it is perception and it's the perception of your stakeholders that matter, not your own self-belief here.
Keith, if you got something to say, say it.
Okay, you know what? You're right.
You
I do.
already did.
I have something else.
No, you got it.
Do it. We love a hot take here.
The one other thing before I wrote down was context, and this is the word that you had said, and this is extremely important that everybody needs to recognize that is contextualized to your organization. Mm-hmm. We can sit here and we can talk about how it's working at BDO. You can talk about how it's working at Kirkpatrick. I can sit how it worked at GM. I think a lot of times we look across the industry, maybe a training industry or ATD, and we look for these stories and it's like, oh, that's what these people are doing. So I have to do that. And I need to follow what they're doing. No, because what they're doing works in their organization, their strategy, their culture, the maturity of their culture is going to be extremely different than your own. So the first thing, to your point, that started this conversation was spending time reflecting on the context in your organization with your stakeholders to figure out how they perceive you. That will tell you where you are in this journey.
Mm-hmm. I think.
Okay, now I'm done.
And I think, Jim, you've seen you've worked with so many organizations, right, that are looking to implement evaluation in the model. And I have to ask you, is there like a one size fits all Kirkpatrick model for every organization?
Not that I've seen.
Same.
No,
no.
But there are certainly principles.
Yeah.
That
yes.
That are that stand the test of time and are the main things that make things happen. And I'm sure, Keith, when you were with GM over those 5 years, you were probably pretty good at leveraging successes. Right? When you see somebody doing it right, not necessarily just the blueprint of it, but what were the main differences, and have them be the testimony to them and say, it worked for us. These major principles, for you, it might be different. I'm sure over the 5 years, that's how it grew and developed, with sharing what are the secret sauce that we have learned here, in our organization.
Yes, the principle is a great descriptor there, and looking inside your organization, but also externally. I think part of our job, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is to have the biggest toolkit possible, which means we have to be lifelong learners. We have to be learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls, because our job is to know, let's take, I don't know, LXP, LMS. being vendor agnostic, understanding how does it work in different organizations so that you can look at the philosophy or the principle of it to figure out how might we be able to apply it here. It doesn't mean that it's going to work the exact same way,
Yeah.
but we should know every vendor out there, every methodology that's out there. It's like I think picture my dad's big red toolkit that's in the basement. And there's 100 different tools in there. I don't have to be an expert in all of these tools, but I need to know what a tool does so I can try and use it to solve a problem when that situation arises. And I think a lot of people in the industry look for that quick win
Mm.
and they just want, give me the answer, tell me how this is supposed to work, versus it takes effort on our part to look at the principle of how it worked someplace else and then figure out, could that potentially work here? What's my culture like? What's the appetite for learning? Do we have a technology first organization, or is it instructor led human organization that's first? These are all different characteristics that you have to understand about where you are.
You know,
Um,
you mentioned tools. One of the things that just drives me up a wall is people say, well, we're gonna for level one, we're gonna use the screwdriver,
mm,
which is a survey. For level two, we're gonna use a wrench, which is a test. For level three, we're gonna use a more sophisticated, uh, you know, pliers or something. And it is single source, single methods to try and get credible data is ridiculous. The smile sheet, the pre and post test, and the 90-day survey. And people are making major decisions on that rather than your dad. He had 100 tools in his big red toolbox because he needed to use a variety of them to get different things accomplished. And same for our world of evaluation. We call it blended evaluation to try and get as close to reality, whether it's classroom or the workplace, and closer to the truth, which is the only way you can make intelligent analyses and the proper decisions. But people are still holding out hope that this single tool is going to give us enough information. And I just see so many times someone sees a comment on a smile sheet, they're going to change some kind of a policy based on that. And it's just drives me up a wall.
Instead of doing their due diligence to really understand and interpret what the
Yeah,
story is behind that data.
that's right. That's right. What's the true story, or as close to it as you can get?
right. So, speaking of evaluation, we talked a little bit about what some of these skills are that you need to be a trusted learning advisor. Um, any sort of recommendations, tools, like what do you see as the reason for evaluation being such a key component to seeing how, your success in your organization when it comes to becoming that trusted learning advisor?
I think nobody would know this next statement to be true more than you two, but this is such a hot topic, an important topic. I think a highly misunderstood topic. And certainly, I'm not an expert. I don't know very many people beyond those on this call who are experts in this area. Going back to this idea of principle, evaluation is such a critical part of success because it's the bridge between the effort and impact. And so without it, our learning interventions are really just classified sometimes as activities, the
Mm.
things that we do because they're expected or they're habitual, rather than being strategic initiatives that deliver measurable value to the organization. And the key word there that I think is often not understood is value.
Yeah.
Tangible versus intangible. Then we add in ROI, and ROI becomes this whole other confusion because we are trying to do this ROI metric sometimes in a silo. Finance doesn't view it the same way, so they're like, "Ah, we don't want your data." Rather than starting off to figure out what is value in our organization. How can value be demonstrated? Can it be calculated? Do I have a relationship with finance and the CFO to figure out what would they deem valuable output from evaluation? For example, my doctoral research was on this specific topic. So I studied chief financial officers at Fortune 500 companies. I wanted to understand from them what value do they perceive exists in organizational learning and development. And it was really interesting because a lot of the participants said, could you stop sending me your Excel spreadsheets with your ROI metrics? Because the way you're calculating it doesn't translate to the way we're calculating it. And you
Yeah.
send these spreadsheets, and we have no idea what they mean, and we're not going to try and decipher it. Instead, could you tell me the story? Could you tell me the story of who you've impacted, who got a promotion, who
Yeah.
didn't quit their job, who felt better as a human and they were able to contribute more to this organization? Tell me those stories and make it relevant to me so that I can understand the human side of this. And it was the first time that I had ever thought of CFOs as human
Fair,
because
Really.
fair.
growing up in this industry,
Yeah.
we're taught finance doesn't like us. They're the first ones to cut our budget. We're the first ones to go. All of these stories to the point where I remember one learning leader telling me, do not tell finance that we have any cost savings. Don't tell them that we have any ROI because then they're going to either cut our budget or they're going to expect us to replicate that over and over again. And then when I do spend time to meet with these individuals, I learned a whole host of information. Like, don't just cut our budget. And here's what the CFO said. I said, you think we're just cutting your budget? No, we're cutting everybody's budget. You just care because it's the only budget that you see. So you think that it's you, but we're not being discriminatory. We're making 5, 10% cuts across the board. Or they would say things like, you have to understand that sometimes we don't even know where the L&D budget is because you could be buried within other business units. And so
Right.
we'll tell the business unit, cut 10%, and the business unit decides maybe they cut most L&D because they don't see value in it. So there's all these characteristics that play into this concept of value and how we quantify or qualify value. And so I would say, going back to your point, evaluation is critical for us, but there are different aspects and components to what we consider evaluation. And I think it starts with understanding value. And how do you quantify, qualify value in your organization? And not just from your perspective, your biased perspective, your myopic perspective, but from your stakeholders' perspective, from the CFO's perspective, the CEO's perspective. Figure out what's valuable to them.
Wow, that was a masterclass right there on CFOs. That's wild. If you have a copy of your dissertation, I'd love to read it. Because that is
I
very
do. I'll
interesting.
send it. It's available
Thank you.
online for free.
Perfect. Thank you. I would love to read that. There is so much that we still have to cover. I'm going to leave us here for now because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but like, we just scratched the surface. So, hopefully maybe next season, it'd be great to have you back to continue the conversation. But I kind of want to know, I don't know if you can tell us, maybe just give us a hint. What are you working on next?
Actually, very relevant for this group. It is a love story to our industry, largely positioned around the value of what we do. And it's not Kirkpatrick / ROI value, it's the heart. And the book is broken down to three main themes: heart, mind, and hands. And my goal is I want to help L&D practitioners, talent practitioners, fall back in love with our industry and the power that we have. And there's three words, my mantra that I share with my team. I have it on my post-it note right here, is that learning changes lives. That's what we do. We change lives. And I think we lose sight of that. I mean, just from a simple fact, if you think about after you finish high school or university, we are the only ones who are advocating for continuous learning after that. There's this idea of, okay, I finished my education and now I'm done learning and I just go and do my job. We are able to change lives and unlock human potential with what we do. But I don't believe that enough people in our industry recognize that value proposition. And so the book is to help them understand different types of value, intangible versus tangible value, how to collect this information, how to storytell, because a lot of the value gets lost when we're not able to tell the story of the people that we're impacting and how we're impacting them. So long story short, it's another book on the value of what we do.
Amazing. Well, if our listeners want to connect with you all, I'm sure so many of them already are, what's the best place to reach you?
LinkedIn. Very active on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you there.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Keith, Dr. Jim, two Dr. K's in the house. Thank you both so much for being here. And we will talk to y'all very soon, friends. Bye-bye.
Hey.
Awesome. That was incredible. Thank you so much. I actually needed a lot of that conversation. I know that we were supposed to record earlier in the month, but I think God does these things, when you puts those little obstacles in place so that you get the message when you need it. So I really do appreciate this conversation. You don't understand how much I needed it today. So I want to thank you both for being here.
Keith, it was a pleasure.
I appreciate that.
We'd love to stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything that we can do to support either of your books, please let us know.
Yeah, I am finishing up the first draft, so I would probably be curious for your feedback, especially since this is your area of expertise. I'm staying away from the measurement piece because I feel like there's so much that exists. I don't have anything to contribute to that. I would say look at Kirkpatrick.
Right.
Mine is more from the storytelling, the heart piece of how to reconnect with what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to take a look at it. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you both. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Same. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.